Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Just from the top, okay, we now have 172 participants. So we do know that our mute buttons are working really well this morning, so thank you. What I wanted to share, what I shared, if anyone could read lips. I'm the CEO and president of Jewish Federation of Orange County, and we're really thrilled to be able to provide this opportunity to our community organizations and our community members. Given the pandemic, we know that in addition to all of the health concerns that we're all addressing personally in our own homes and with those around us, we know that the financial implications are some of the greatest things that we're facing, and that's what's precedenting this call today. I also just want to share, and as participants continue to join us, because we did have over 200 RSVP for this morning's meeting, and we're now at 184. What I also wanted to share is that Jewish Federation has been convening our community organizations for the last 3 weeks, over 50 organizations, to make sure that we are working together. We're leading this effort, we're listening. We've developed a platform that many of you have seen, the Volunteer Hub, where people can ask for help and offer help. And today's call is really focusing on what's front and center of all of your minds and our minds, which is the finances, the economic impact of the pandemic. And so we're really fortunate that we have a lot of incredible brain trust in our community. And what I'm now is turn this over to our board chair, Stephen Gordon, just as we hit 100. So thank you, Stephen, and I'll turn this over to you now.
Arlene, thank you, and thank you very much for the work that's being done by the team, the entire team at Federation. And if the organization has ever been tested, and if our community has ever been tested, this is that moment. And it's amazing how people are coming together, galvanizing, breaking down silos, and everybody's working together to help one another. So today's call, I think, is critically important from a timing standpoint. And I thought it was important that we bring experts to the table to be able to address the issues that people are experiencing in our community. And I want to be able to introduce, and I'm very proud to introduce. Can everybody make sure they're muting their phones, their background noise? I'm very proud to introduce and have on our call today to be able to host Rick Sanborn, who is the president and CEO of Seacoast Commerce Bank. I've known Rick for quite a number of years. He's a very close friend, and I have tremendous respect for the work that he's done. Many of you know that I have built banks, run banks here on the West Coast, and for many years I've admired Rick and the work that he and his company have done, that his bank has done. Many of you are aware of the, now what we're on is COVID-3, the third bill that has been passed, or the third action that's been taken by our government, this one being a $2 trillion deal. And there are many impactful components of this bill. And one of those is through the SBA programs, the SBA system. And they have made programs available to small businesses across this country in order to make certain that during this time of tremendous economic impact, that jobs are retained, that businesses are able to survive through this and live to fight another day. So in bringing Rick to the table, I was tremendously concerned that many businesses could get lost in the shuffle of financial institutions that might be bureaucratic, that they might get lost in the shuffle of the SBA system. And so what I wanted to bring here today is Rick, in that, Rick runs one of the top SBA banks in the entire country. The beauty of what he does is his institution focuses specifically on SBA related programs, SBA related financing, not on all sorts of other things that lots of other banks do, but he's got a major degree of expertise, and his entire base, his entire team at Seacoast focuses only on SBA programs and SBA financing. His apparatus, his machine that is built there is highly efficient, highly streamlined, and gets business done very quickly, so that especially in a time like this, a time of crisis, you don't want to get lost in the shuffle in somebody else's bureaucracy. So with that said, I want to turn the call over to Rick, and then once he goes through a whole presentation, we're going to turn it into a Q&A discussion, and then we want to turn things into being able to be actionable. So Rick, I'm very proud to have you on this call today, and there's tremendous need in this community, so the communication is all yours now.
Thanks, Stephen. And hopefully it looks like I'm unmuted. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Wanted to make sure. Well, glad to be here. Any way that I can help, it's why we're all in this together. So I wanted to briefly talk about the Stimulus Bill 3 and some provisions that are in there specific to the small business community. And the last thing I will talk about is what's known as the Payroll Protection Program loan. That's what everyone is really interested in getting. Before I get to the PPP loan, I want to talk about other provisions that may be applicable to the small business community. So within the Stimulus 3 bill, within Stimulus 1 was an original appropriation to expand the SBA's Disaster Relief Loan, also known as the EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This is a specific loan program. We call it the Disaster Relief Loan, where if businesses have been damaged by an event, could be a hurricane, could be a tornado, could be a flood, the SBA has a mechanism to be able to provide funds to people, for businesses, for those specific damages. That specific program, again, we call it, it's labeled the EIDL, we call it the Disaster Relief Loan. That is a loan that you would apply for directly from the SBA website. No banks are involved with that. The maximum loan amount is $2 million, and again, it's for actual damages. Some things to note on that. That loan is not forgivable, but it is a disaster relief loan specific for the COVID-19 disease. So that provision. Banks really don't have information on that because it is applied for directly through the SBA. Another provision within the Stimulus 3 bill is if you have a current SBA 7A loan. So if any of the businesses out there have an existing 7A loan, the government's going to make your loan payments for the next 6 months. This is pretty unprecedented. And that's supposed to start April 1st. However, there are some mechanics that banks need to work through in order to get your payments deferred. You'll need to talk with your bank, but the way it is supposed to work is if you have an existing SBA loan, this would be an SBA 7A, the government will make the payment to the bank on your behalf. Again, there's maybe some logistical challenges right now considering payments are due today. A lot of people are on automatic payment, but it will work out that either your payment, if you've already made it, will be applied later or sent back to you, and then the government will pick up your loan payments for the next 6 months. So that's a great provision if you have an existing SBA loan. Now, the best part of the stimulus package is this loan program called the Payroll Protection Program, or short, we call it PPP loan. What the government's trying to do is provide a mechanism for businesses to either keep people employed or rehire people that may have been let go as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. The overview of the program is this. You need to determine what your monthly payroll amount is, and you can average all of last year's payroll. So take your all of 2019 payroll, divide it by 12. That's your average monthly payroll spend. You multiply that times 2.5, and that is the effective amount of the loan, the PPP loan, you can apply for. Now, there are some exclusions. You have to exclude any pay of any individual over $100,000, and we can get into that later. But in essence, take your 2019 total payroll cost, and that would include payroll, state and local taxes, benefits, vacation accrual, everything. Divide it by 12. That's your average monthly payroll spend. times 2.5, that's the amount of the PPP loan you can apply for. Once you get the loan, and I'll go into the process in just a little bit, but once you get the loan, if you use those funds to pay for payroll, meaning you provide your employees, you use it for payroll for existing employees, or you rehire employees who may have been let go, then that portion of the loan is going to be forgiven by the government, meaning you will not have to pay it back, and it is not taxable. So it's a great benefit. Now, not everyone may use those funds for payroll. There are other eligible uses for which you can use it for. For example, you can use it to pay rent for your business, for insurance benefits, for interest on debt. There are specific criteria within the bill for which that can be used. And if you use it, again, most of it will be forgiven. If not, it turns into a 2-year loan, now at a 0.5% interest rate. There was communication earlier in the way that the bill was written. This was supposed to be a 10-year loan at a 4% rate. When Treasury issued their guidance yesterday, they cut it back to a 2-year loan at a 0.5%. I do want to say there is a tremendous amount of flux in this program right now. While Treasury has given out their guidelines, we are still waiting for SBA guidelines, and we hope to get those Thursday. So this program may still change. We are waiting for it to actually get all of the guidelines. The official launch date for applications is Friday, so there's still a couple of days before folks can officially apply to get this done. So kind of to recap, on the PPP loan, that is a loan that will be done through a bank, which will then be processed through the SBA. You take 2.5 times your monthly payroll, that's your loan amount. If you use it to retain employees or rehire employees, then that portion can be forgiven. The remaining amount will be termed out over 2 years at an interest rate of 0.5%. So let me talk a little bit about the application process. And again, this is very much in flux because we do not have all the criteria from the SBA. There is an application that's now available. The Treasury sent the application out yesterday, and I did pass those on, so hopefully they can be distributed to everyone on the webinar. There's an application, then there are guidelines for borrowers. It's a 2-page application. It is very simple. There is not a lot of information. This is not going to be the typical SBA process that people may have heard of or may have experienced before when applying for an SBA loan. Treasury really wants banks to be able to process these loans, get them out within 48 hours. So this is very unprecedented for a government program. A little bit about who can apply. Any small business, for the most part, can apply as long as it qualifies under the SBA size standards, which means you have to have 500 employees or less. That's the main criteria. There are some exceptions for accommodations. These would be hotels, motels, food service, and franchises. And this information is in the Treasury guidelines. So if you're a business, small business under 500 employees, you can apply. What the SBA basically needs to know is, were you in business before February 15th of this year? Do you have less than 500 employees? And what is your monthly payroll? That's the essence of the application. There are some questions to make sure you meet some general qualifications. Once we get that application, the only thing that banks need at this point, and again, I need to stress, we have not received SBA's guidelines, we've only received Treasury's. And right now, it appears we're going to need is verification of your business. So if you're a corporation, a copy of your articles of incorporation. If you are operating under a DBA, a copy of your DBA filing or your business license, something to prove the entity exists. And then we're going to need the payroll information, whether it is a payroll register, a payroll tax filing, something to support the number you're putting on the application for what your average monthly payroll is. So as of now, that really is all that we're going to need. We take that information, we run it through a system to make sure that it qualifies under the SBA guidelines. We then produce the loan document, excuse me, which we don't have yet. We'll send that out electronically. You sign it via DocuSign, we fund the loan. So it really is supposed to be that streamlined. There is not going to be any financial information required. Treasury understands that a lot of businesses have been put under a lot of stress. Some are out of business, like restaurants. And the idea is, we know that you don't have the financial resources to pay the loan today, so there's no need for us to get financial information. There are no personal guarantees. There are no collateral requirements on these loans. It, in essence, is going to be a signature loan for your business. So that's great. Again, we're still waiting for the final qualifications or application qualifications from SBA, and we hope to have those by Thursday. I know there's going to be questions about what compensation is included. I can send over the preliminary information we have on what is included, but until we get that information from SBA, we just don't know. Another important part of this is eligibility under SBA. As I mentioned, the 500 employee threshold is the main criteria. We have not yet received guidance whether the other affiliation rule is going to apply. This would, for example, mean if you own 2 or 3 businesses, or your business is owned by another business, those are considered affiliates. We just don't have the guidance today from SBA on whether the affiliate rule is going to apply or not. So every bank in the United States, every FDIC insured bank, is eligible to partake in this process. And it may be, you don't have to be an SBA bank today to do it. So what may be best, since you have relationships with your existing banker, is to submit this request and talk to your banker to see if they are participating in the program. I'm also going to get information later today on some third parties that may be involved in this, who can handle much larger volume of applications coming in. Just want to give you some context to how big this program is and the potential challenge that the SBA is going to have. On an annual basis, the SBA has an appropriation or an authorization to do up to roughly $30 billion a year in financing. That's about $2.5 billion a month that goes through their system. This program is $350 billion. So it's more than 10 times the annual volume, and we expect that these applications are not going to go in to fill this bucket up within a couple of weeks. So there is a concern that the SBA system is not going to be able to handle 10 times their normal annual volume in a couple of weeks. So I will stress there's going to be, you'll need to practice some patience as the systems figure out how much it can handle these applications coming in. This is why we're working with some technology companies on a technological path through to the SBA to help with this potential tsunami that's going to hit their system. So again, don't have that yet. But this program is going to be a regular SBA 7A loan, but with very different processes and very different criteria. So I hope that kind of gives you a ballpark of how the program is going to run. I would love to open it up if there are questions that I might be able to answer. So Arlene, I'm not sure how you want to handle all of that.
Yes, so thank you so much. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa Armoni, who is going to be moderating the questions. There were a series of questions that came through in advance, and I know that she's going to share now a little bit about how to do this. So I'm going to go, let me find Lisa.
Okay. While you're putting Lisa on, I want to add a couple other things. I talked about the EIDL loan, which is the economic disaster loan. You can apply for both an economic disaster loan and a PPP loan. However, the requirements of the PPP loan are that whatever you get under the disaster loan has to be deducted from the PPP loan. So you need to be cognizant and aware of how much money you're getting under the economic disaster loan, because that will again be deducted from the PPP loan. Just from a timing standpoint, the disaster loan may take several weeks to months to get. It's not an efficient process. Where the PPP loan, we hope to be able to fund within 48 hours after an application is put in. So I would recommend you focus on getting an application in for the PPP loan first. You can always get the disaster relief loan later.
All right, so Rick, as Lisa is pulling together all these questions that have either come through in the last day in preparation for this call, or I've been watching a flood of questions coming through during this call. A lot of questions seem to revolve around the type of employee, the status of that employee that you count. So part-time, full-time, 1099, independent contractor, etc. And then there's also a lot of questions around the calculation as it relates to the employee that makes over 100,000. So if you could just speak to those two, and then Lisa's going to flood you with questions.
Sure. Yeah, on who can apply for one of these loans. For this specific loan, it is not the normal SBA criteria. So it is available to small businesses, nonprofits, tribal unions, sole proprietors. These are eligible for the PPP loan. Pretty much any business is going to be eligible given certain constraints. Let me give you an example. For a sole proprietor, now, I mean, I have a brother, he has his own construction business. He doesn't get a paycheck, but he gets a net profit at the end of the year. So as a sole proprietor, he figures out what his net profit is for the year, divide that by 12 times 2.5, that is the amount that he can apply for. So yes, sole proprietors can do it. If you have employees that are 1099, our understanding is yes, that will also be included. And again, we're waiting for final guidance from SBA, hopefully tomorrow. But as of now, what we've been told is yes, 1099 employees are included, salaries, wages, tips, and then for a sole proprietor, it is your net income, your profit at the end of the year, which would be considered your income for purposes of determining this loan. So all of that is available. And I'm sorry, Stephen, what was the other question?
The calculation when you say employee salary to 100,000, if you've got an employee that's making 150,000, our understanding is you don't exclude that employee. It's the amount up to the 100,000 of salary that gets included. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right. Let's assume you had 3 employees, one making 20,000, one making 80,000, one making 150. So your total payroll is 250. You can only include up to 100,000 on the employee who's making 150. So your total payroll would in essence be 200,000. So that, hopefully that makes sense. And you take that times 2.5, you can get 500,000 worth of PPP loan assistance.
And is that a salary threshold of 100 inclusion, or does that also, then do you add on top of that the payroll taxes and benefits?
Our understanding is it's total compensation. So if you look at compensation, anything over 100,000 per is excluded, because they may make 80,000 salary when you add in their health insurance benefits and anything else. It puts them over 100 in total, and it is limited to 100 in total. And again, waiting for SBA to confirm all that, but that is our understanding today.
Okay. Lisa, are you ready?
I hope so. And thank you, everybody. Just if you continue to put your questions in the chat box, I'm just trying to, pull them all and ask them collectively. So Rick, there's a number of questions around the dates or the time frame in which you're supposed to, what is the 12-month period specifically?
Yeah, what we were told is take your 2019 payroll. That's the easiest way to do it. Since 2019 is currently done, assuming you were in business for all of 2019, add up your total payroll cost, divide that by 12, that's your average monthly payroll.
Okay. And there's a question, you mentioned it applies to nonprofits and 1099s. Does it also apply to single member LLCs?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. There's somebody's asking about can new hire costs, or that is somebody who was not employed last year, be included in the calculation?
Yes. Treasury is hoping that you will either retain employees or rehire employees or hire new employees. They're not specifically saying you have to rehire who you let go. They're looking really more for a body count or an FTE count as part of the calculation for the forgiveness. But yes, you could rehire others. You could rehire the same people. That's perfectly fine.
Okay. regarding the state and local taxes, are these taxes paid by the employer rather than employee? And does it include FICA taxes?
Yes, we've been told it is any tax that is applicable to compensation. A lot of people have asked about workman's comp. That is not applicable to compensation, where state income tax, FICA, Social Security, those are specific to compensation. So it is our understanding that that will be included.
Okay. We have a question from somebody who's asking, the organization does its own payroll. What documentation is required? And the same question with regard to outside contractors.
Yeah, we're waiting for guidance from SBA on that. What we have been telling people is you internally probably have some type of payroll register. And we know a lot of companies do this internally. They're not using an ADP or a paycheck. So whatever information you have internally that you could provide to support the number will be important. And that's what's going to be required for the forgiveness after. So the SBA is going to say, okay, what was your payroll before? We gave you this money. What did you use the money for? Do you use it for payroll? Be able to provide the support that, okay, I had 5 employees. This was their payroll before we let people go, before I got the money. Here's my payroll with the number of people today, to be able to support that it was used for payroll to get it forgiven. And there will be more guidance on the forgiveness part down the road. Right now, Treasury and SBA are really solely focused on getting the program going and getting money out. And then they'll provide us with guidance on the forgiveness process. Worst case, though, now people don't understand, worst case is if what you've used and the money you got is not eligible for forgiveness, you're still going to end up with a loan, which is going to be a 2-year loan at a 0.5% interest rate. So it's not a penalty like you're going to get in trouble if you didn't use it for payroll. It's just that it won't be forgiven and you'll have to pay it off like a normal loan.
We have somebody who's asking if there are any requirements for need. And
Not that I know of. I mean, well, as far as do you qualify, like you have to have had a COVID-19 need? Yes, that is part of the program where you will have to sign a certification that you are requesting the loan because your business has been impacted by COVID-19. Treasury has already said they believe every small business has been impacted. So by design, or basically by default, everyone really has been affected by this virus, so they should qualify.
okay, great. And Rick, I know you answered this question for me yesterday, but I want to confirm somebody's asking, actually a number of people are asking again about parsonage and if that's included as well.
If it is something that we've been told goes through the payroll system, so it shows up on Q2 or somewhere within your tax system as a payroll expense, it is our understanding that that is included. Now, I have not heard specifically about parsonage, but if it is something that's included in payroll and you can support it, I think that's going to be the biggest part of this, is can you support what your total payroll cost was and what you've used the money for, then yes, we believe that that should be fine.
Okay. When does the 2-year loan commence, and is it 2 years after funding?
Yes, it would be 2 years from when the loan's funded.
Okay.
I also want to point out that once the loan is funded and you've gotten the money, there are no payments for the first 6 months. So there's going to be an automatic payment deferral for the first 6 months. And then the balance, I believe, is termed out over the remaining 2 years. We haven't seen an actual note from the SBA yet. So again, we don't have the actual specifics. This is all still very much in flux, but that's what we've been told so far.
Next question. If employees are brought back part-time and getting part pay and part unemployment, does that count?
Not sure. I believe what they're going to do is look at just what was your total payroll spend, how many employees did you have on the payroll before, what was your total payroll spend, and how many employees were on the payroll after, to figure out the forgiveness portion of this. Again, still a little bit in flux, but it should not be specific to an individual. They're not going to go back and say, okay, you had Lisa on the payroll in January, you didn't hire Lisa, that doesn't count. That is not going to be part of the equation. It really is just get folks back on the payroll is the most important part of this program.
Will utilities be included in the amount forgiven?
Not forgiven, but it is what it can be used for. So you can use the funds to pay for utilities, rent, interest on debt. The only part that's going to be forgiven is the amount that you used for employees. This bill really is focused on trying to get people back to work, to get businesses to either hire people or retain people. The loans, you can use it for other sources, but the forgiveness part is just specific to employment.
Write it down. Oh, sorry.
So Rick, would one conclude then that what you're saying is that you could end up with, let's say you used the majority of it to keep employees on the payroll, and you used a small portion of it or less of it for rent and other expenses, you could end up with a hybrid concept of a large amount of it forgiven, like a grant, and a certain amount of it that ends up sitting as that loan for 2 years.
Yeah, Treasury is assuming about, on average, 75% of the loan is going to be forgiven. The other 25 will end up being an actual loan under the 2-year at the % interest rate structure.
Okay. We have a lot of questions here around 1099s, actually. One question, is there stipulation regarding the type of 1099 worker to be included? The questioner gives the example that they employ manufacturer representatives.
Yeah, not sure, other than it does need to be somebody who is in the United States. Some folks have asked on other calls have been on, if we have 1099 employees who are not in the US, they are not eligible. But if it is someone you are paying compensation through a 1099, that our understanding is that is eligible compensation for the overall payroll spend for the company.
Okay. Next question, can the salary of an owner of a business be part of the calculation?
If it is a salary, yes. That's part of your compensation, total compensation. Again, limited to $100,000.
Okay, is the loan a monthly payment or balloon payments?
Loan payments are going to be deferred for 6 months, and then it should be a monthly payment. Years. Till we see the actual note from the SBA, we don't know, but that is our understanding. It will be a 2-year monthly payment.
Okay. Next question. The application provides space to check what you are using it on. If we have cash on hand, please confirm that we should be using these funds payroll only.
That is your best chance to get it forgiven if you use the loan proceeds for payroll. That would be best to do.
Okay. And so somebody's asking, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth here on subject, but I'm trying to get all of these in. So a subcontractor or consultant on a monthly stipend would not be forgiven? That's what somebody's asking.
That I don't know. Unfortunately, again, we'll need to get guidance from SBA on that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, here, this one's a little bit complicated. If you were in business all of 2019, but added additional employees in Q1 of 2020, can you then average, I think what you mean is, can you make an average between 2020 and 2019?
Yes, this is up to you to decide how you want to average it. We've been told the best bet is just to use 2019, but we understand businesses have different needs and different staffing in the first quarter if they're seasonal. That is something that will be taken into consideration. A lot of this is going to come back to how do you support what your payroll spend and your staffing levels were before the loan and after the loan. And I believe that they're going to try to be reasonable on how they look at this. So yes, that should be fine.
Okay. Somebody else is asking, in terms of the things that are included, does that also include employee pension and LTD payments?
I'd have to look at the regs on that. Anything that the company is putting into compensation expense should be included. Again, there are some exceptions in the regulations, waiting for SBA to kind of outline, and SBA should give us, here's the actual underwriting criteria. Here are the things that are included, here are the things that are not. We have guidelines, we just haven't heard from the SBA yet on whether that is the actual process that they're going to go through. So hopefully by Thursday, we'll have that calculation.
Great, thank you. And of course, we'll share any material that you send, we will share out with this group. How do you show the 2019 profits of a sole proprietor if you haven't filed 2019 taxes yet? And it continues with the filing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you can just use your 2019 profit and loss statement that you would have done for your own company. We know that a lot of people have not submitted their 2009 taxes yet, so just a 2019 P&L showing what your net profit is.
Somebody's asking if the PPP program is available to private country clubs.
Good question. Not sure. It is available to nonprofits. So I would imagine, if assuming a private country club is a nonprofit association, if it's a 501c3, then yes, it would qualify. 501c4, I don't know, but we have seen that any 501c3 would qualify.
Okay, next question. We have enough working capital for payroll right now. Should we apply now or wait until all of our money is gone?
I would apply now. Reason being is, while 350 billion seems like an astronomically large number, over 10 times the normal SBA program, there is talk that this program's going to be used up and the money will be allocated within a few weeks. The program only runs from Friday until June 20th or June 30th. So there's a limited time to apply, and as soon as the money is gone or allocated, the program stops.
Okay, and in that same vein, can we fill out the required forms through your bank right now?
You can, however, we have to wait on non-clients right now. With the change that Treasury made some changes yesterday, which makes these unfortunately a little more difficult for banks to do. We are an SBA bank. We will be doing these for clients. We are working with and talking to other avenues for non-clients to be able to do this program, but every bank right now has access to do this program. Or I should say that the actual application process starts on Friday. So every bank can do these. I'm not saying every bank's going to do it, but every bank has access to do it. And for those that don't, again, we're trying to find another avenue. There is a company that we're working with, Kabbage. Kabbage is a big business lender, an online fintech company. And we're trying to work with them to be able to funnel loans that we can't do through them. All banks kind of have limited capacity based upon their capital, their liquidity. So, I mean, we're a $1 billion bank, but we can't do $1 billion worth of these loans. So we do need to prioritize existing clients first, because that is what is important to us, is making sure our clients can still stay in business as well. We will also do non-clients to the extent we have capacity. But that's why we're trying to find this other avenue where these third-party fintechs can get these processed to help people out where their bank won't do it.
So when you say there's all banks are doing this, is there a sort of a list of preferred banks or anything like that, or should people be turning to their own banks? What do you recommend?
Any FDIC insured bank or credit union or the Farm Credit System right now is what's been defined as available to do these loans. So whoever your personal business bank is, as per Treasury, they are able to do this program. So I would talk to your existing bank first. Okay, we have another question. It just disappeared. We are using an outside temp agency to fill out our manpower need. Can we consider the payment to this agency as part of our payroll? We believe so, yes. Anything that can support what you have paid in compensation, whether you're using a temp agency, excuse me, a third-party payment provider, anything that can support what the company's payroll is should work. Again, that's the intent of the program, is what have you as a company been spending to hire people? We want to give you 2.5 months worth of that to continue to pay your employees and keep them on the payroll, and or hire back people who you may have let go because of this COVID-19 crisis. Okay, another question from an owner. He says a lot of expenses are paid through the business, such as car payments, phones. What needs to be done in terms of those expenses? How are they calculated? If you're talking about like a sole proprietor who comes down to a net income at the bottom, for sole proprietors, that is a benefit. You get to run your personal expenses or some expenses through the company. But for this program, they are really just going to look at the net income of the company for the year, divide it by 12. That is your annual, or that is your average monthly income, if you will. So if your company at the end of the year only made $25,000, then you've got about $2,000 a month times 2.5, about $5,000 that you can apply for into this program.
Somebody's asking if there are setup fees to the bank that need to be paid.
There are no fees to you to apply. The bank does not have any fees. And if you're talking to another bank or a third-party agent, they cannot charge you a fee. That's very important because there are third parties that are trying to facilitate this on behalf of banks. They're called agents. You do not have to pay a fee. If someone is saying you need to pay a fee, it's the wrong person. Don't go through them.
Okay, next question. On the PPP information sheet, it says that for forgiveness, the lender must make a decision on the forgiveness within 60 days. Is the forgiveness discretionary with the lender? And when would a lender not grant forgiveness?
The SBA is putting the process on the banks, but the SBA is going to provide the guidance, the guidelines for how we determine forgiveness. So, you know, they're pushing part of it onto us, but really it's going to be based upon SBA guidelines. We will need to get verification of payroll. Like I said before, when you submit the application, here was my payroll spend, here's the documentation to support it. Within 60 days, here's what you used it for. Then we will go through the SBA's calculation to determine what is forgivable and what is not. It's not up to the bank to decide. It really is a guideline from the SBA.
Okay, and then I have two questions about whether the forgiven amount is going to be considered income to the business.
It is not. What is forgiven is a grant. There is no income tax implication.
Okay, I think we've actually covered our questions here, unless anybody has some new ones to add to the chat box. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, maybe a few more. Okay, again, I think there's some of the questions that are coming in are, whoops, clarification questions. Oh my goodness, there's a lot coming in. Hold on one second. What if you just started the business in 2020?
The business has to have been in existence before February 15th to qualify. So if it was in business before February 15th, then all you're going to have is your payroll. Let's say you started at February 1st, you're only going to have 2 weeks of payroll. That is what will be considered, and that's a half a month. You will double that for 1 month's salary. So you can still take advantage of the program. We're just going to have to figure out what is your average monthly salary based upon the time you've been in business. But yes, if you've been in business before February 15th, you can still get into the program.
Has the SBA provided a definition of utilities?
They have not.
Okay.
And there is, I can see some of these questions. There's no prepayment penalty either. You can pay it off whenever you want.
Thank you. What if we want to hire 10 new employees, but local laws say they cannot come back to work at our manufacturing plant?
As long as you're paying them, that's fine. But the idea is to get people off of unemployment, rehire people, or retain people. They don't have to physically be in your building. It just means that you put them back on your payroll. And that's exactly what this program is for, is get payroll back out to people who either didn't have it or pay people who you were considering laying off. That's the real whole purpose behind this program.
Okay, and so somebody's asking, I think it's related, about a variance. If a company headcount drops from 100 to 95, for example, is the forgiveness proportional, or is it all or nothing? Is there an allowance for variance without any impact?
Yeah, there is a proportional calculation that'll go into the forgiveness part. Okay.
Do rental LLCs without employees but who are 1099 contractors, would they qualify for the PPP program?
It's our understanding they will qualify, but since there is no Well, for LLCs, there may just be a net income. That's more of a personal corporation. You take the net income, that is your income for the year. That is considered your compensation for the year. But you would include 1099 pay because, again, think of it as if I am paying somebody, first my business, sole proprietor, there's a net income. That really is my profit for the year or my compensation for the year. But I am paying people as a 1099, that can get added in. I have a brother who's a contractor. He has 3 employees. He pays the 3 employees on 1099. I told him to take that 1099 expense for those 3 employees, plus his net profit from his sole proprietorship, add that together, and that is his compensation for the year. Divided by 12 times 2.5, that's the amount of loan he can get.
Next question. For new hires in 2019 who make over $100,000, can you annualize this to determine your monthly average for loan calculation purposes?
You need to look backwards to determine the average monthly comp. So you have to look at what your payroll was, limit it to no more than 100,000 per person. That gives you the amount, or to determine the amount of the loan, but you can use it. I mean, technically you could use it to pay one person 500,000 if that's what the number came out to. There may be a cutback on forgiveness based upon the proration of number of employees, but yes, you could use it to pay employees 100%. So there's kind of a 2-part forgiveness. Did you use it for payroll? And then there's a calculation based upon your head count and or whether you reduced people's salaries. It is a little complicated, and until we get the final guidance from SBA, we're not going to be able to really figure out how to determine the forgiveness. But in essence, did you have payroll before? What was the total? What's your average? Did you get the money and use it for payroll? That's the overriding qualification. Then there are the fine print portions. Did you reduce body count by 25%? Did you reduce salaries by 20%? There are those criteria within the forgiveness calculations, which we need SBA to provide those guidelines for us and for everybody.
Okay, Rick, somebody's asking, how can we rehire people when the unemployment benefits are higher than their regular pay?
Yeah, that's a challenge. And that's, I'll say, a flaw in the stimulus bill where some people actually will make more money if they're on unemployment. And in those cases, my recommendation is have the people stay on unemployment, get the higher pay, use the money for the ancillary things like rent, utilities, insurance, recognizing that it's just not going to be forgivable. You're going to have to pay that back over 2 years at, fortunately, a 0.5% rate. It's a very low interest rate.
Okay. We have somebody asking if partnerships are eligible.
Not sure on that. That'll be part of the SBA eligibility information when we get it.
Sorry, they're popping up and then I lose track. Okay. If I pay staff now for the past few weeks of missed work, will those funds be forgiven with PPP?
If you're paying them now, yes. This is really the start date, if you will, is when the application goes in, which is Friday, but it really is applicable back to February 15th. So I believe that's going to be fine. Again, we'll need to get some of this clarification from SBA, but if your intent was to pay some people now, use this money to reimburse that pay, then yes, that should be fine. It's the intent of this, again, is to pay people who either have been let go, rehire them, or pay people to retain them in the business. That's the intent of this program.
Okay, I'm going to go back. There's to the question that I just asked about new hires in 2019 because there was, I think, a little bit of misunderstanding. Maybe it was on my end, but I'm going to reread because the questioner re-asked it. He says, if new hires in 2019, if they will make over $100,000 on a full year of work, but since they started in the part of the year, can you use $100,000 rather than what they were paid for the monthly average in the loan calculation?
Our understanding is you need to use what they were actually paid. So if they were hired, let's say their salary was $200,000, but they were hired in October 1st. They're only going to get 1/4 of that in your compensation expense, which would be $50,000. So only $50,000, what you actually paid in compensation is what should go into that calculation. You can use it to pay them going forward, but as far as what your average monthly compensation expense was, you've got to look at what your actual compensation expense was, not what, you're not annualizing somebody who started on October 1st. It's actual as per your payroll register, what did you actually spend?
And I know you had mentioned earlier about tips, but also somebody's also asking about commissions. They're asking really about tips and commissions in the calculation.
Yeah, those are allowable. So anything that you're putting into compensation expense on your financial statements. Again, there's a list that makes up, it's salaries, it's wages, it is tips, it's commissions, it is health benefits that you're paying, state and local taxes that you are paying. So everything that goes into what would be considered your total salaries and benefits expense, that is the bucket or the pool of money of which you're going to figure out the average for the whole month. It's not just salary, it's everything inclusive. That's what gets included in your total salary expense.
Okay. So the next question is about rental properties. If you have rental residential real estate as an LLC, some rents may not come in. Can this program help cover the rents that won't come in, or can be used to help in other ways?
No, this is not a program to make up for lost revenue from your business activity. This really is just for employee or compensation expense. So it would not qualify to cover lost rents from your investment properties.
Okay. Somebody is asking, I have vendors that are paid a commission for their services to my company. Do they count as employees who were paid?
We believe so. We believe anything that runs through your payroll expense, and that would assuming that you take that commission and it is running through your payroll expense on your company, then yes, we believe that is included in the overall compensation expense for the company.
Okay. Somebody's asking, what if you are a subchapter S and are receiving commissions for your work and you are a single wage earner and the owner of the sub S? Are you eligible?
Great question. Not sure on that. Sub S income does flow through to you personally. So the company, which is a sub S, I think if you look at you have to look at what the total salary expense is to the sub S. I'm not sure if the quasi net income or distributions to you out of the sub S are included, because that is technically income. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait to get guidance from SBA on that.
Okay, for this question, I may need some help from the person who asked, but she says if a cleaning service is closed because the building is not using the service anymore, is that included?
I'm not sure if that is, well, this would be an expense that the company is incurring to have the building cleaned and they've now stopped the cleaning service. I don't believe that is an expense that can be paid for out of this. You can use it for rent, you can use it for interest on debt, you can use it for utilities for the building, for your company, and you can use it for compensation expense. I don't think it's allowed to use it to pay for a third party like that.
Okay, here's a question. We are a 501c3 and applied online for the EIDL and the $10,000 emergency grant. The program seems to suggest that the $10,000 grant has the same forgiveness as the PPP. Would the $10,000 grant under the EIDL just be deducted from the 2.5% we would get under the PPP?
Yeah, if you got an emergency grant under the EIDL program, or you applied for any loan under the EIDL program, that is not forgivable. When you apply for a PPP, whatever money you got under the EIDL program is deducted from the amount you're eligible to get. So if your PPP loan request was for $100,000, you've already gotten a $10,000 grant under the EIDL program. The maximum PPP loan would be reduced by that 10,000, so you could only get 90,000 as a PPP loan.
Okay, there were a lot of questions about specifically that, so I'm just going to skip over those. Okay, somebody's asking, there seems to be some maybe conflicting language around the 4% or 5%, and I think you had mentioned that it had changed the
Right.
recent guidelines.
Yeah, the original guidelines was actually the bill said that the loan amount would be a $10,000, sorry, a 10-year loan at 4%. Treasury yesterday issued their guidance and reduced it to no more than a 2-year loan at a 0.5%.
Next question. If you are a sole proprietor without any employees and file Schedule C, are you eligible for the loan program?
Our understanding is yes. That Schedule C, whatever your net income as per the Schedule C, that would in essence be your income or compensation for the year. Take that amount, divide it by 12, that is your average monthly income from the Schedule C, or that's your average monthly salary or benefit, if you will. And that is the basis upon which you can calculate the 2.5 times.
Okay. Are legal expenses, fees to lawyers, eligible for forgiveness?
Heck no, we're not paying any attorneys for anything. No, that is, my understanding is no, that's not a qualified expense under the PPP program.
Okay.
It's very specific to salaries and benefits, utilities, interest on debt, and rent or mortgage payments.
IRA over the last year considered income?
I'm sorry, you broke up there. Can you say that again?
Oh, are early IRA withdrawals over the last year considered income?
No. No, that is not compensation. That's a personal income expense. This is focused on businesses. So this has to be a business, excuse me, or a sole proprietor that's making money. And what is your either income, your salary expense, or for a sole proprietor, your net income from your business. It has nothing to do with personal income. That's not included.
Okay. There's been a couple of questions about whether there are special provisions or any sort of rules when it applies to private medical practices.
A private medical practice is an actual company. Most of them are run as corporations. So that corporation usually does have employees that pays employees, or if not, if it's kind of a pass-through where the doctor is getting paid like from a hospital through their private corporation, that corporation would have a net income. And that net income would be, in essence, the compensation to the doctor for the year. So that we understand is how that process is going to work. The net income from the private medical corporation, limited to $100,000, is the annual salary that can be used for purposes of the calculation.
Okay. The next question, we pay a management company a percentage of revenue for staff, rent, utilities, etc. Can the portion paid to the management company for staff be included in determining payroll?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we work with a lot of management companies. We are trying to get guidance on that right now. We have some that have employees on staff. We have some that lease employees to buildings. We don't know the answer on that yet. We're trying to get guidance from the SBA on that.
So Rick, when you get that guidance, would you be able to shoot that to Lisa so she can distribute it?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. As a sole proprietor, I pay a salary and commission to a staff of 6, and my salary is the business's net income. Can I include the employee's wages plus my net income up to $100,000?
It's up to $100,000 per person, but yes, you would take the commissions you paid to your staff plus your net income up. You have to limit anybody to $100,000. So if the commissions you paid were $20,000, $80,000, $150,000, you could include the 20, you could include the 80, you can include 100 of the 150, plus net income from the business up to 100,000.
Okay. Are we required to submit utility payments for the last 12 months as well when applying, or only payroll payments?
Only payroll.
Next person is asking, how do you record ownership for a synagogue on the application?
Good question. For nonprofits, there are no specific owners. Again, we're waiting, since this is a unique example that is now part of the SBA program for this PPP program. We don't know what documentation we're going to need or how we're going to figure out ownership. We need guidance from the SBA on that.
Okay. Somebody's asking how they get the application, and I can just share, if you are registered for this call, if you registered before 7 a.m., you would have received an email from me with the application. If you, and I'm happy to send those out again. I have all of that I can share.
And it's on the U.S. Treasury website.
Yeah. Okay. Can expenses for employee health insurance be forgiven?
As part of the payroll expense, that is our understanding. Yes, it does go into the calculation as part of what your payroll is. It's salaries, it's wages, it's tips, it's health benefits, and yes, that should be forgiven as part of the payroll spend once you get the money.
Okay. Somebody's asking about whether irrevocable trust can be part of the loan can you apply for the loan for irrevocable trust? Yeah,
I don't think so. This is really geared towards a business, and a business has to be a legal business entity, which usually is going to be either a sole proprietor, a DBA, a corporation, an LLC, a partnership. That is what the general definition is under the SBA guidelines. This is for a business. So if you just have your own personal trust that you're doing business out of, that's not really a public benefit company, if you will, that is doing business in the public. That's kind of your own personal thing. So I do not believe that's going to be a qualified entity.
Okay. So there's a couple more questions just about FTEs and if this is only applicable to FTEs, or if you have part-time employees, how that calculation is made.
This has to do with this forgiveness portion. Number one, it is, what is your total employee count to get to the 500? And we have been told that it is based upon an FTE, full-time equivalent. So if you had 2 employees that are working 20 hours a week, that's in essence 1 FTE. For the forgiveness part, that again is supposed to be based upon how many employees did you have before, how many employees do you have once you've gotten the money. And we are going under the assumption that it is based upon full-time equivalent, not necessarily body
count. Okay, somebody's says, I had to close my business as a sole proprietor due to the pandemic. If I apply for unemployment, can I still apply for a PPP grant?
Yes. I believe if you get the PPP money, in essence, it's to reopen your business and rehire employees. At that point, you would not be getting unemployment because you're no longer unemployed. You have the money to continue on with your business.
Okay. Some of these that were asked were already answered, but there's still more coming in, so just bear with me. Okay, we discussed retirement benefits. Okay, if a Schedule C sole proprietor, and if it matters, a home-based business, and 2019 taxes nor business income known for 2019, can the 2018 total net income divided by 12 months be the monthly allowed amount applied for under the terms of the program?
Yeah, not sure. Again, that'll come from SBA on what qualifies, what documents we need to add, or what information is provided to determine your monthly payroll. If you had no income, no, in essence, compensation or income in 2019, I'm not sure you can go back to 18. That would, in essence, imply your business really didn't make any money. So it's hard for the program to give you money if it wasn't, you didn't have any payroll spend.
Okay, somebody's asking about an S Corp. For S Corp, is the shareholder net income included in the compensation calculation? And there's a follow-up question. How do you demonstrate the amount for forgiveness?
On an S Corp, if there is income paid, that would flow through as a salary line item. That is what should get included. I know that you can include your net income if you are a sole proprietor. For an S Corp, I do not believe so. That is a legal corporate entity that would pay salary and benefits. The net income doesn't include, although if it is included, it would be limited to 100,000 in and of by itself. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little confusing. Again, a lot of this is going to be dependent upon the SBA giving us guidance. Sole proprietor, you don't pay yourself a salary. Your salary is your net income. As an S Corp, you do sometimes get salary, you sometimes get distributions. So we have to wait and see what the SBA is going to provide us for guidance. But in any event, again, it's going to be capped at 100,000 per person.
Okay. Rick, could you
Was there a second part of that question?
about how do you demonstrate the amount for forgiveness? That was the second part.
Yes, again, we'll need to get something from each business showing what their payroll spend was before, which supports the amount of the loan, and then the payroll expense after the loan's been given. So yes, there will be some documentation required, whether it is a payroll register or a state payroll tax filing, something to support that in essence you did use the money for payroll. That is the underlying criteria to determine whether that gets forgiven or not. Can you prove that you used the money for payroll expense? So it is incumbent upon everybody to be able to prove that. What documentation can you provide to the bank, which we will then provide to SBA, to support that, yes, you can prove you did use that money for payroll expense?
Okay, several people are asking you to clarify about how rent plays into the PPP loan.
Rent is a qualified use of funds, but it's not forgivable. So the Treasury has defined very specific items that go into the calculation to determine how much you get. And again, that is just your overall compensation expense, salaries, benefits, wages, tips, taxes. That is what you calculate your loan amount from. Once you get the loan, you can then use that for salary, wages, benefits, utilities, rent, and mortgage. Those are the only items that are allowable as expenses from the money that you get from the loan. So that's very important. You can't use it to go buy a car. You will be signing a loan agreement under penalty of perjury that you agree to the terms of the loan. If you are audited and you get caught and you did not follow the terms of the loan, you can be prosecuted. So this is a government loan. They take this very seriously. You need to be able to support it. You need to be able to follow the rules. Pay for salaries, pay for benefits, utilities, interest on debt applicable to the business, and your rent or mortgage applicable to the business.
So Rick, said differently, using numbers. So let's say somebody is paying $100,000 a month in terms of salaries, comp, benefits, and then they also use the money for $6,000 a month of rent for the business. The $100,000 a month is the total portion that would be forgiven. The $6,000 a month is going to be something that the borrower will be, or the recipient, let's do it that way, would be dealing with as a 2-year loan at the 0.5%.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we've got some new questions that have come in. Could you please clarify, oh dear, hold on. Could you please clarify that distributions are included in the payroll amount?
Waiting for SBA guidance on that.
So the next question, our business is a medical general partnership of 3 partners. We have several full-time employees as well as several physicians paid as independent contractors. Are the monies paid to our physician independent contractors included in payroll salary loan calculation?
It is our understanding, yes, that is part of the overall corporation's salary spend or payroll spend, yes.
Okay. Okay, somebody is asking, can we use the EIDL to pay for equipment repair?
No. Oh, I'm sorry, the EIDL. Yes, the EIDL is a separate program that is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. There are very different criteria for that. It is my understanding you can. That does not run through the bank again. That's direct through the SBA. We have nothing to do with it. So don't really know the specifics of it, but I believe you can use it for any need or purpose for which there was a loss as a result of the event or the virus.
More questions about clarification or requests for clarification. Can life or disability insurance be counted in payroll costs for the purpose of calculating the loan?
I believe so, yes.
Another question, can you please explain how economic injury loans, if funded, get deducted from the PPP if the PPP is processed first?
If the PPP is processed first, you'll get that loan. When you apply for the EIDL, I'm assuming there's a spot in there where you need to mark off whether you got a PPP loan or not. That may limit the EIDL loan. I'm not sure. Again, that is a specific SBA loan program direct through the SBA. You'll have to work through the SBA on that. But on our side, we do have to deduct any existing EIDL loan from the PPP proceeds.
Okay. Somebody's asking for clarification between 1099 employees versus 1099. Oh, sorry, it just disappeared on me. 1099 vendors. So between 1099 employees and 1099 vendors for payroll calculation.
If you're paying a vendor a 1099 and that flows through your G&A expense, it's not a payroll expense, then no, that would not be included. If you're paying somebody as part of your compensation expense, then yes, it would be included. So you need to determine where that expense is flowing through your business P&L. That's the determining factor. It goes back to, can you support the amount of payroll spend for the company, which in a lot of cases can include a 1099 employee that does flow through the payroll part, as opposed to paying somebody as a general and administrative expense that's not part of the payroll.
Okay. Somebody's asking, what is the period of time in which the loan has to be used?
The payroll portion has to be used over 8 weeks. So once you get the money, over the next 8 weeks, you use that money for payroll expense. That is part of what the loan program is.
Okay, somebody's asking, with regard to forgiveness, can a business pay salaries with an SBA loan and rent through other assets? How does the government know which funds are being used for which purpose?
The dome.
You're going to have to provide support
Yeah.
for that. But that's going to be part of the forgiveness calculation, if you will, is how can you prove you use the money for payroll expense? And obviously, if you need to pay your rent through other sources, that's fine. But you should keep a ledger. If you received $100,000 through the PPP program, just keep a ledger. I paid Sally $5,000 this month. I paid these 5 people $5,000 a month. I paid rent. Keep track of what you are spending the money on. Now, I mean, there's no way to really have a receipt for your rent to say that was paid from a check from the PPP. But you just need to be able to support how much money did you get, how did you spend that money, and keep track of that.
Okay, Rick, can you confirm if taxes, federal and state taxes, will be included in the forgiven amount?
What is on the Treasury website is state and local. We have not heard on the federal.
I'm just waiting to see if more are coming in. Does working with an agent rather than a bank directly delay the loan approval process?
I'm going to say yes, because you're going to submit the application to somebody who's going to look at it. Then they're going to turn around and send it to a bank. I'd say skip the middleman, go direct to the bank.
Rick, I know we've only got about 10 more minutes. I think it's important for everybody on the call to understand how to action on this now. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about what qualifies, what type of business, what type of employees, how people do the calculations, etc. you've talked about people going to their primary financial institution that they already have a relationship with. I started out by saying I have grave concern, because time is of the essence, about people getting lost in the bureaucracy. I worry about people going to a bank, and even though maybe they do some SBA lending, they don't do it as a core business, and they're trying to learn it on the fly, and they're used to doing maybe 5 loans, 10 loans a year, and a small community bank. So what do you recommend to everybody in terms of being able to action on this and be able to actually get something done?
I would recommend go to your existing business bank first, see if they're going to be involved in the process. Second thing is, I hopefully will have more information this afternoon on Kabbage, which is a huge national small business loan platform that's involved in this process, and they should have the bandwidth and the capacity to process this very quickly and efficiently. I'll send that information out when I get it this afternoon.
Okay. And I know you're extraordinarily busy with all this, dealing with existing clients and new potential situations, as well as trying to make sure you're on top of all the legislation coming through. If we've got, I have no doubt that Lisa is going to get flooded with more questions as soon as this call ends. Do you have the time to respond to those questions if we send them to you in bulk, and then we'll be able to get back to all of these people on the phone and others and distribute?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can send me an email with that, I can, throughout the day as I get breaks, I'll go through and address those. Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
Lisa, do you have any more?
Well, they're still coming in. So what I will say is I'll ask a few more, Rick, if you have the time, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be capturing all of those. So if we didn't get to them on the call, we will do our best to follow up with everybody. We also are recording this call. So if there's information that Rick talked about that you didn't quite get, you can listen to the call again and get the clarification from there. So we will support you on this as much as we can in every way we can.
And then I would also urge everybody on this call, once you have the recorded, archived call, the video, that you share this with other business owners who were not on this call, who may benefit from all of this information that Rick has provided.
So I'll ask a couple more that just came in the last 2-3 minutes, and then like I said, if we've missed any, we'll go back and make sure that we've hit all of them. Okay, so somebody's asking if we already have a disaster loan from a few years ago from the SBA that we are still paying for. Can we apply for this new loan?
I believe so, yes. Because that was not a disaster loan specific to COVID-19. The EIDL loan, PPP loan exclusion, these are both related to COVID-19. So my understanding is that's fine.
Okay. In terms of loan forgiveness, does that include all payrolls made after February 15th?
The payroll that you can attribute to the loan that you got, yes.
Okay.
And I realize that you may be paying other people. And again, it's not person specific. It is, our payroll was 100,000. We got 250,000 in a PPP loan, of which we used 200,000 to make payroll on whoever it was over the next 2 months. Then yes, that 200,000 of the 250 would be forgiven. 50,000 then turns into a regular term loan over 2 years.
Okay, and I'm gonna make this the last question. It just looking for clarification on that 8-week spending time frame that you had mentioned earlier.
Right. After the loan is given, the intent is over the next 8 weeks, you will use those funds to pay for payroll and or utilities or rent or everything else. So that is the payment period. If you think of it this way, my payroll is 100,000 a month. I got a loan for 250. You should use that loan to make payroll for the next 2 months, which would cover 100,000, 100,000, plus the other 50,000 used for rent, benefits, utilities. So that's kind of the intent of the program. Take your average monthly payroll. We're going to give you 2.5 times that over the next 8 weeks or 2 months. Use those funds to pay for your payroll, and the other 50,000 is used for other qualified expenses, which will then get termed out over 2 years. This is why Treasury is saying they believe only about 75% of each loan is going to get forgiven, because they're giving you more than 8 weeks worth of salary.
Okay, and Rick, if you're able to see what's in the chat, just a lot of expressions of gratitude and appreciation for your time and your expertise. But no new questions in the last 30 seconds. So,
So Rick,
well, it's my pleasure.
So Rick, I want to add on behalf of everybody, and whether they're on this call or in our community, the work that you're doing is so critically important. Thank you, thank you. We talk about the people on the front line. You are on the front line, and the work that you're doing to help businesses, educate businesses, potentially save businesses is admirable, and we thank you. And on behalf of this Jewish business community, I'm making you I dub thee an honorary member of the tribe. and seriously, we thank you. The work you guys are doing is incredible.
It's my pleasure, Stephen. I mean, I know there's a lot of misinformation, so I very much want to do this and enjoy doing it, because it's important to get the right information out. Everything's very complicated and everything is getting misconstrued. So to the extent I can help, that's what I'm here for. I'll do it anytime.
Thank you. And again, everybody on the call, as soon as we have this all available on recording, please share it, because what Rick just mentioned about misinformation turns into confusion. Confusion turns into poor execution, and that's going to cost businesses their ability to survive. So let's all of us collectively galvanize, do our part to help one another through this whole thing. Rick, again, thank you. Federation, thank you. Everybody who called in, thank you for making the time. And everybody, we all care. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.